it's been a weird trend in all of baseball this year. If you look around baseball, there's been so many ebbs and flows with really good teams and poor teams as well. But I've never seen so many like great streaks where they look like the best team in the world, and then poor streaks where they look like they can't beat the cellar dwellers. And, so you start to wonder, where is the cream settling? Is everybody going to end up where they're supposed to be? Because whether it be Milwaukee or the Cubs or the Dodgers or the Mets or the Phillies, there's been 7+ game win streaks and 6 or 7 game losing streaks and 13 out of 16 losses, things that I've never really seen in baseball before. So this inconsistency is something that's more prevalent this year, and I don't really know how exactly to explain it.
Is there something strategic that you think Mendoza can do differently, whether it's a lineup thing, whether it's, I don't know, being more aggressive, even though they do steal bases, just something to try to force the issue to get them out of this?
I think what is in his control and command right now is the pitching staff more so than anything else. I think he's pleased to have the 3 young kids up there. I think that brings some energy. They've all pitched well, even though they didn't get losses over this last weekend. They all have pitched well and shown that I think that they're real. This is not a fluke where you bring up a prospect from AAA and he has one good outing and you're not going to hear from him again. Yep. I don't think that's the case with any of these 3. So I think that's a benefit. That gives him more weapons in the bullpen because the bullpen has been absolutely taxed. Helsley was a big piece that came over in the trade deadline and hasn't been able to be that 8th inning guy. You can never get to Edwin because they're giving it up in the middle innings. So I think his focus is there. The offense, as we've talked about, they were historically good in August, and the team went 11-17. I mean, they were the best they've ever been in that month, and the team was 6 games under 500. So that tells you that, it's been an inconsistent run with the pitching not being able to get the job done when the offense has been, firing.
We talked a lot about Manaea to start the show. What would you do here? For me, weeks ago, I would have moved him to the bullpen, have him be a weapon out of the pen because he showed dominance. I think you and I did talk about this in the newsroom as well. Last night, I was actually encouraged by it. Now, obviously, it wasn't a good start, but it was one of the best he's had, if not the best, and encouraging that he closed it out with 3 scoreless innings to finish 5. What would you do with Manaea?
I had the exact same take last night. I thought early on he looked a little dejected, and he looked like, there's this thing in sports where if you go out trying not to fail, you're going to fail. If you go out thinking, God, I don't want to let the team down, you're going to let the team down. And there is this moment where you're like, screw it, which is exactly what Manaea said. He said to himself after the conversation with Mendy underneath, after the bad second inning, it's kind of like, screw it. I'm just going to let it fly and let it happen and stop trying to do some things. And all of a sudden you saw him free and easy. You saw some swings and misses. You saw him, feel like he was more convicted with his choices. And he had 3 great innings to finish his day, which I was most encouraged by. So, look, I think if you thought, I think they did the right thing with Senga, as hard as that was to do. I thought that Sean was a guy that could be a bullpen piece because he is capable of being dominant for 3 innings at a time. And so he could piggyback on one of the other starters, like a Clay Holmes, who they've had to limit his pitches, and he's been having a hard time going past 5, but he's been good in those early innings. Those 2 guys combined, if they went with 5+ kind of instead of a 6-man rotation, I could see him fitting into a role like that.
See, I wouldn't do that, though, and I hear you. I don't think the body of work has been good enough where I'm going to roll the dice with 17 games to go, because if that tunnel conversation does not lead to what you guys and maybe some others think that it could, well, then you could just flush another game away down the chute, because he didn't give the Mets a chance to win early last night. He did stabilize, and I give him credit there for sure. But if there weren't other options, there's nothing to discuss. The 3 kids look better. I think that Peterson has been shaky, but obviously he's been a rock and an all-star this year and before this year. And I think Holmes in totality has been better than Manaea. His ERA is almost 6. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not moving mountains to do a 6-man rotation or explain anything away. He is not, this is just my opinion, has not been good enough. I would not pitch him. I would go with 5, and I would let Manaea come out of the pen.
Well, I mean, essentially, we're saying sort of a different version of the same thing. I'm saying if they decided to go to 5 and make Manaea a bullpen piece, I think that's an effective way to use him.
Okay.
If they are staying with 6, then they're staying with 6, and Manaea is that 6th guy, and you don't really have another choice in that matter.
But why would you stay with? But why stay with 6 if you're making room for somebody who hasn't been that good?
I think it's something that they're debating right now. I think they're making, and you heard Mendy last night, who has done a great job. He's very, very honest. That's one thing that I think is great about having him there, is he tells the truth. And last night when they said, is Manaea you start making his next start, he said, as of right now, yes. That doesn't mean absolutely yes, like he said about Sproat or he said about Jonah Tong, right? And so I think all of these options are on the table. They've got, they've looking at what their off days look like, because you can give the guys that need the rest without having to have a full 6-man. So I do think that that's on the table. And I do think that Sean would be an effective guy if they decided to go 5 and have him be a bulk piece out of the bullpen.
How much of their struggles do you think just has to do with maybe a mentality? Like last year, we saw the chemistry take them to another level. It's hard for me to watch this team, who's arguably one of the most talented Mets teams that I've ever seen. Arguably, I'm not saying they are, but you look at Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and so on, and even when they do hit, they don't win. When they do pitch, they can't hit. Like what? There's got to be some kind of reason for the inconsistencies. I know we're all struggling for answers here, but you're a player. You've been in these clubhouses before. I'm sure you've been on teams that have had some sort of similar issues. Is there anything that you could chalk it up to?
No, and it's a great question, because I think about it all the time. There was magic last year. There has not been magic in my mind this year. There's been some good stretches where they seem like they play as a team. Everybody's rooting for each other. It feels a little bit, I was going to say corporate, but it's not corporate. It seems a little bit more expected, I guess. And so last year was unexpected. So the magic was something that fans were able to gravitate to, and the team bought into, because, hey, there's something about being told that you can't do something, and then all of a sudden you're going to do it, and you're going to do it better than anybody else, and you're going to defy everybody. That's the way the team felt last year. This year, they were told that they better do it. They should do it. They've got the best team in the world. They spent the most money on the free agent market that has ever been seen before. So that expectation doesn't bring the same type of magic. I think they're going to have to find a way to rally for that a little bit right now, because I see some dejected faces when they're losing games that they feel like they should win.
Maybe they're just not having as much fun. Last year was kind of fun, and this year with the expectations, as you say, BT, with that crown, it's heavy, and it doesn't seem like they're having as much fun. We'll take a quick break. We're in studio with Todd Zeile of SNY, former Met, of course. Get into some of the stuff you'll be doing tomorrow with some Mets as well on the anniversary of 9/11. Back on the Fan, 888-808-1019 is the number to call, and I don't know why I gave that, because we have Todd Zeile in studio, so you could call us later on. I gave it out of habit. We're joined by Todd Zeile in studio, and we have, obviously of SNY, former Met, and tomorrow, Todd, I know you've done a lot of work with this over the years, the 9/11, the anniversary, of course, of 9/11. You're going to be at Firehouse Engine. This is what Jay Horowitz wrote.
I can tell you. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to be at Ladder 12, Engine 3, which is in Chelsea on 19th and 7th. And,
nice.
This is something I've done year after year after year, and really a guy that's become a really close friend of mine, who's Battalion Chief Tom McCarthy, retired last year after 43 years, but he was on duty during 9/11, lost 5 of his men. We always go and pay tribute to the guys fallen, and I'm going to be joined tomorrow by Jay Horowitz and Al Leiter and Johnny Franco and Bobby Valentine coming. And, as the Mets, Jay has done an amazing job of making sure that we always stay committed to this cause and never forget. And, I think from that perspective as well, Jay was reminding me that, and I did some sit down for this as well. The Mets on their YouTube channel are premiering something called 11 Days in September. It's a documentary that really focuses more on the immediate aftermath of 9/11 and how the Mets and Shea Stadium played a big role in that relief effort. It became, a makeshift morgue. It became a supply center, and all of our team became, instant volunteers, not knowing what to do to help, but found some ways to be able to contribute, and so they're premiering that this week, and I think, as I had told you, I'm working on a documentary as well with the Major League Baseball Network for the 25th anniversary. So we're getting started on some of that tomorrow with this morning commemoration that we've done every year.
It's awesome. I've even heard, I remember Tiki telling me that the Giants were going to Shea Stadium's parking lot, helping with food and whatever they could do. I mean, listen, it's a while ago now. The rawness begins to dissipate, but the other things don't. In the interactions you've had with victims' families, do they find any area or way to enjoy their lives? I know that's a strange question, but
yeah, and it is a strange question. And I think if I sort of rewind back to that moment, right? We come back from Pittsburgh on the night or early morning of September 12th by bus because obviously couldn't fly. And, something I'll never forget is coming across the George Washington Bridge with a team full of guys trying to figure out what the world's going to be like. And we were getting escorted over the GW Bridge, and we could look down and see smoke in the air and lights streaming, and just realize in that moment the world has changed. You could hear nothing but a pin drop and guys crying on the bus ride. And so from that moment, we didn't know what to do. And fortunately, Bobby Valentine and Jay Horowitz and Sue Lucci from the Mets really kind of said, hey, we're going to be active and go down and start, seeing what we can do to help. And I thought it was going to be invasive. And we went down there, right away, 4 or 5 days after the attacks, and met with firefighters. And we were walking into these guys in the most horrific moments of their life, still digging for their brethren, and thinking, why are we here? And then you could see them look up and see Mike Piazza's face, or Johnny Franco, or Bobby, or me, or Robin, the guys that were there, and just felt like they could remove themselves for just a minute and talk baseball and have something that felt common. That's how I traded a hat. That's how we got started wearing the hats in commemoration.
You were the first one that did that?
Yeah, I traded a hat for an NYPD hat, and then the other guys wanted to have, that sort of solidarity from our team. We were told by the commissioner's office that we couldn't wear them because they were, they restricted the uniform violation. And all of this will be told at, in better detail with some other insight in the documentary that we do. But the reality is, we realized at that time that even though we felt like we were invading into their personal space, they welcomed us in. And so we thought, okay, well, maybe sports has a way to help heal. And so I think that's what motivated us. And that's, to your point, that 9/21 game and the invited guests that we had, which were fallen families and children that had lost their parents. And, there's story after story about, families that didn't know how to react. You get a base hit. Was it going to be quiet? Are you allowed to celebrate? And the Piazza home run kind of lifted this air and allowed people to say, let's go Mets, USA, and have a smile. And we've got some great testimonials that feel like baseball in some way, and sports in a more holistic way, helped them get through that time. And that's really what the story is about, how, baseball helped unite America, or at least New York City, at a time that you didn't know what to do.
From a fan's perspective, I remember being excited that baseball was back, going to that game, and going into the same Shea Stadium parking lot where we used to park, and the feel was totally different. And there were barriers everywhere and missing signs, and it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But that's a fan's perspective as I'm going into it, like, holy crap, this is bizarre. And then kind of, the anthem and all that stuff from a fan's perspective. You had to play baseball in that game. What was that like, going to the park and then showing up once you got there?
That's a great question. And it was an interesting one, too, because I would say maybe not 50-50, but I think the team was split as to whether or not we wanted to play or not. Okay, is it time? I was a proponent that, hey, Giuliani and Bush and the people that are trying to piece this city back together are like, hey, we're not going to let them keep us down. time to show that this city is resilient and sports is the best way to do it. That's a great way to unite. So I was all for that. But some of the guys were still, had a little trepidation about going into that. Was it safe? Was it were 5 people going to show up, or 5,000 or 50,000? We had no real barometer. So going in there that night, seeing the amount of security and, the way that shaped up, 20 years later, I finally watched the game. I didn't, and I remember in my mind that what I remembered about that game was not the game itself. I had no idea if I got a hit. I had no idea if I made a good play. I knew Mike's home run, and I very, very little aside from that. But what I did remember was the national anthem. All the guys lined up on the field when the bagpipes came into the stadium. Liza Minnelli on the 7th inning stretch singing New York, New York, and watching the whole place like erupt with emotion. Those are the things that I remembered, and I had to watch the game to kind of realize what happened to the game, to your point.
That's absolutely. I mean, you almost feel. I almost don't want to transition, because there's other things to talk about. But it's crazy. It's crazy to think where we were, where we are now. When you said not all the guys wanted to play, did you guys take a literal vote? Was it actually man for man and counted up?
We did have meetings about it. I don't know that if we'd have said, hey, we're not ready, if that would have been. I think it would have been weighted towards the overall decision, but I don't think we were necessarily the absolute decision makers. And I think there was enough, momentum around baseball and the commissioner's office and Giuliani. Say what you want about Rudy, but he was the leader in that moment of this city and kind of the heartbeat. And he was adamant that we've got to show that we can stand back on our feet, and this is the best way to do it. So I believed in that. And and by the way, the thing that's so bizarre about it, I think this goes to the point is it's tough to transition. Well, the reason we still talk about it now is because, a lot of the firefighters I go to visit, they were either 2 years old or not even born. And they want to know. And to them, a lot of what happened there and the way the city rallied around the first responders is maybe the reason they signed up to be firefighters in the first place.
No question.
Or they had, a parent that went down in one of the towers and things like that. So it's the idea of never forgetting, which I think is what has really kind of kept this alive for us. And, you look back on that moment now and, World Series and, great personal moments aside, there's nothing even close in my career that comes to the importance of playing in that game.
Tomorrow will be the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And then, as you mentioned, next year, the 25th anniversary, Mets will be playing the Yankees on that September 11th. Speaking of Mets playing the Yankees, they did so 25 years ago in the World Series. Do you still hate Timo Pérez?
The hell was he doing?
I've had to forgive Timo. Your therapy, says that you got to let that go. No, I mean, look, was I surprised at the time? Yes. Have I talked about it a lot since? Of course, because it was that pivotal moment in Game 1, and I know that was probably when you broke a speaker in your mom's basement.
I was living
but
there.
Unless you were there. Look, I thought the ball was out off the bat as well. I think the reality is he just thought it was gone and figured he was going to be coasting around the bases, and it surprised everybody. And, maybe instant replay shows that it snuck out over the top and came back in. But nevertheless, it just seemed to be one of those defining moments of that 2000 World Series, and another thing to, check on the belt of one Derek Jeter, because he makes the off-balance throw perfectly to Posada to get him at the plate. All those things had to align. And so, no, I don't hate Timo at all. And by the way, he was very good for us down the stretch and helped us get to that point. So all is forgiven, Timo. Come back and, you come out to Citi
Maybe
Field
he can pinch run tomorrow for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all's forgiven from your perspective, not from mine. I still hate him. No,
I don't blame you. What's it like in the dugout after somebody makes a mistake of that magnitude on that stage? I mean, does Bobby light him up? Do you light him up? Somebody's got to light him up, no?
Nobody lights him up, and it was one of those things like it's a 0-0 tie in Game 1, right? In the 6th inning of Game 1 of a World Series, of a Subway Series. It was a great game. It was, nobody had cracked through at that point. So it was a little bit stunned reaction, more so than an angered reaction. It was stunned like, okay, well, let's get back out there because this game is still ours to win. And we took a lead and had that game still and lost it in the 11th.
Yeah.
And we had a lead in the 9th again. So, look, you can say that was a pivotal moment. I'm on second base. There's 2 outs. We've got Ventura coming up. There could have been other ways to crack through. But at the end of the day, we still had an opportunity to win it in 9 and wasn't able to close the door.
Real quick, Todd, there's been some shiftings. And by the way, Todd Zeile's with us in studio here, BT and Sal on the Fan. There's been some shiftings here where the Yankees have not won since 09. The Mets are spending money. Mets took Soto. Mets had a nice run last year. So it's changed a little bit. But when you're in the moment, and pro athletes aren't ever conditioned to think that they can't beat another pro, otherwise you wouldn't be a pro.
Right.
You'd be mentally weak and you wouldn't make it. But going into that, the Yankees were still at the apex of their powers, 96, 98, 99, obviously going into 2000. Did you think that you were going to beat them?
Yes, absolutely. I think I told Sal. I think I told Sal this one time, and he's like, "Why?" But when we sat and we, as a team, we watched the final playoff game for the Yankees to determine who we were going to. We had already clinched, and we knew we were going to the World Series, and so I personally and a lot of our guys said, "Let it be the Yankees. We want the Yankees. We think," and we had, back and forth games during that season. The Roger and Mike thing happened, and the split doubleheader at 2 parks in the same
that was insane.
On the same day. I mean, it couldn't have been a more bizarre and interesting baseball year for New York City. So we thought, yeah, this is the way it's supposed to end. The Mets are going to unseat the mighty Yankees in a World Series. Bring them on.
But aside from the symbolism of that, did you actually think that they had weaknesses that you guys would exploit, making you better?
We did.
What about that team did you think was weak?
I don't know that we thought that they had weaknesses. We just felt like we could beat them. We felt like even in the games we lost to them during the regular season, we felt like we were in those games and should have won those games and could have won those games. And so I think, was it Seattle or whomever?
Yeah,
I think it was sort of the unknown, and they were, we didn't really know them at all. We knew the Yankees, and we felt collectively like, hey, we can beat these guys, and we wanted we wanted it for the city as well. We thought it would be an electric, opportunity in New York City, and it was. It just didn't go our way.
It was a good try.
Get the hell out of here with that good try nonsense. BT and Sal, the Fan with Todd Zeile in studio. A couple more for you. Todd, you were a good postseason player in your career. 29 playoff games, 292, 4 homers, 14 ribbies. Did it with the Orioles, Rangers, and the Mets. You think that postseason success is something that it's not the flip of the switch, but with this Mets team in particular, like to me, I look at it saying they have some guys that can do damage there. Is there something to that upping their game, and do you believe that this team can do that if they do make it to October?
I've always thought and felt like when you get to those big moments, you want to see who's got that kind of inner, strength to perform in those moments, and not only to perform in those moments, but to want to be the guy in those moments. And I thought, anytime I had an opportunity to play in the playoffs, I'm like, hey, this is the stage that I want to be on. I want to be up with men on base. I want to be the guy up there. And I feel like my game got better. My focus got more keen. The bat felt fast. The pitching felt hittable. And so I loved anything to do with like big games, postseason play. And I think there are some guys on the Mets that feel like they like that stage as well and have shown that they can have success in that moment.
Todd, you came up in 89, and Sal and I were talking before you came, and we obviously, I'm a few years older, so I remember you, I don't know more than Sal, but I obviously remember your career very well. 89 to when you retired to now, all right? The game's changed a ton. Is the game better now in your eyes or when you first entered the game in 89?
You sound like an old guy if you say it was better in my era, but it was different. I think it was different. What I do like, I think the pendulum swung a long way towards analytics and 3 true outcomes and things that I didn't really buy into as much.
Yeah.
I thought there was certainly a world where analytics was going to help and play a part and give information that was interesting and maybe shape the game differently. I thought it went to such an extreme that I felt like the game became a game that was run by people that had never put on cleats and stepped on the field.
Geeks.
And that felt like, okay, you're eliminating some of the human element, which I think is the most fascinating thing about any sport, including baseball. So I think the pendulum's started to come back. I do feel like some of the rule changes that they've made, that I'm a purist, I think have been good for the game. I think stolen bases being included back in the game is something that's good. I think the pitch clock has helped. And I usually get resistance on this, but one of the things that I think for regular season, having the runner on second in extra innings, I think has been a good thing. And why? Because I can remember during this time where I think the pendulum was swinging towards 3 true outcomes, I did games, and this is a personal bent, but I did games where the Mets were on the West Coast. So the game starts at 10. You're in a 1-1 game after 3.5 hours, and then go 17 innings of 1-1 with 30 strikeouts in the game. That's literal. I'm talking about 30 strikeouts on the two teams and a 1-1 game into the 16th and 17th inning, because everybody walks up every at bat either going to strike out or hit a home run. Yeah. And it became such a boring game to me that I'm like, something's got to change. And I feel like that was sort of the moment where the pendulum started to come back. And so I think the guys are better athletes now. I think that they're stronger. They're more committed year round. They are faster and bigger and throw harder. And so I think the game is probably tougher today than it was in my era. But, it's relative because these guys grew up with that same level of competition until they got to the big leagues.
For me, it was never about pace of play. It was always about quality of play. So in that game, 1-1 with 30 strikeouts, like that's just bad baseball.
Agreed.
Not to mention that it takes forever. You think the Mets get in the playoffs or no?
I do. I do think they do. I think their back's against the wall. I think they feel like now, at least I don't know. I'm speculating that, but if I were in that clubhouse, I feel like today is the day that, hey, back's against the wall now. We don't have any padding anymore. San Francisco believes they can overtake us, and and Cincinnati's not that far behind them. So, hey, it's in our own hands. Time for us to take care of our own business.
Would you change your feel if tomorrow you wake up, and obviously you'll be working tonight, but it's 9-3 Phillies? Like, are you placing that much emphasis tonight to kind of shift this thing?
I don't necessarily think it's a must-win. I don't believe necessarily in must-wins unless you're in Game 6 of a series. Yep. But I do believe it's an important game, and I do think that sometimes people will say, well, the most important games, you never know which ones they're going to be over the course of the year. This is an important game.
One win can change the feel. They win tonight, all of a sudden it's, okay, deep breath. Even if the Giants win a game, just changes the feel.
There's no question. How would you grade Lindor's season, like in totality? Because we focus on Soto and the pitching and all the Mendoza's moves lately. We haven't talked about Lindor as much, and the Mets aren't hitting a ton. A to Z, Lindor's season 2025. What have you seen?
I feel like Lindor's season has been one that you're going to have to look back on and really analyze at some point, because it's felt like, oh, he's had a great season. He's an all-star for the first time as a Met, and he got off to a really good start, which is unusual for Lindor. And so you figured that lull would have to come. I think the lull took a long time for him to kind of figure out his way out of it, but he had built up such good numbers. It never really looked like his numbers sunk that badly. He's played lesser quality defense this year, and I think he would tell you the same thing than we've seen in the past. Even though he's been spectacular at times, he's missed some routine plays, and he's put a lot of blame on himself for costing some games with his defense. So I think overall he's had, I would say, a decent year, but not a great year for Lindor this year. And I think part of the reason that it's so important that he has a good year is it just seems like when he goes, this team goes. And
That's why I'm asking.
I mean,
yeah.
and you've got Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso's been spectacular with driving in runs. Brandon Nimmo's had his hot streaks. You've got the young guys that are swinging the bat well. But at the end of the day, when Lindor is hot, this team seems to follow, and that's a lot to put on one guy's shoulders because it's a team game. But when we've seen him warm up, this team seems to follow.
Last one from me. Would you go matchups based, or would you just say Baty's our third baseman, or Vientos is our DH, or vice versa? Would you, McNeil in center, McNeil at second? How would you align those guys?
I may differ on opinion on this one, but I like the idea of Jeff McNeil in center, Brett Baty at second base, Mauricio at third, and Vientos DHing. I've liked that for a while. It may be hard to plug that in because they've put, Mauricio on the cooler for the last couple of weeks, and he's on the milk carton, and we haven't seen him. But
keep running the bases like you did the other night. You're going to stay there.
I mean, I think that was something that was really starting to click at the trade deadline. You got quality play out of all three of those young guys, Baty, Vientos, and Mauricio. Vientos was just starting to warm up at the trade deadline. They make the trade for Mullins. They've got to play Mullins. That puts Jeff back at second. That puts Baty at third. That puts Vientos on the bench or at DH. And I thought you saw a lull because of that, even though once Mark gets hot, this team has gotten hot. But look, I've been a guy that I thought they had enough pieces at the deadline not to have to go get Mullins or anybody else in center field.
All right, go get those cuts in. We've taken up too much of your time today. You got to get ready for Saturday.
We can't say that in the air. What cuts are you talking about? I'm not doing any training for the game this weekend. I'm just going to go out there raw, Sal. No, I got to do something so I don't blow an Achilles like somebody on the other side of town.